All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our webinar on Is Sleep Really a Billion-Dollar Business? As you know, this is the second in our webinar series as part of the HealthSpan show, and we're really delighted that so many of you are joining us this afternoon. Thank you. So before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone, please feel very free to use the chat. If you have particular questions for our panel, please use the Q&A. It's the best possible workflow for us to manage the questions as they come in. I'd like to hand over very quickly to our moderator, Cyril Ebersweiler from SOSV, who's going to take us through the discussion today. Over to you, Cyril.
Thank you, Angela, and thanks for having me at the HealthSpan show. It's very exciting for me to be here with great entrepreneurs. For those that don't know who I am a general partner at a venture firm called SOSV, which has been investing over the last 10 years in deep tech startups. I'm also the founder of two accelerator programs, one called China Accelerator based in Shanghai, and another one called Hacks, which is actually for hardware devices, which led me to actually invest in a few sleep tech companies. So it's great to have many entrepreneurs, I think, in the audience to go through what sleep tech is about, and in particular, you probably have all seen lots of applications over the years that have been created to kind of solve sleep tech, but most of them have been missing something very special, which is the collection of biomarkers in particular. So it's fairly rare, I think, to have a panel with three entrepreneurs in the hardware space here, as well as someone there with lots of intellectual property skills that will all interact together to let you know what it takes to take a product to the market when it's a hardware device, why they are doing this in this in the sleep tech industry, and how does it work, tackling an $11 billion market for devices, and really at the forefront of the personalization for sleep tech. So today we have four people participating here. The first one is Tim. You can just say hi, Tim. CEO and co-founder of Coline Technology, a world leader in personalized digital sleep improvement. And Coline delivers audio coaching in relaxation experiences personalized to the individual based on their sleep, and has tracked over 1 million sleeps to date. So fairly mature company that you might have seen on Kickstarter, in particular for their last product called Nightbuds, which I think Tim is probably wearing out there. Welcome also to Rachel Chase, the CEO and co-founder of Xenia Technologies, which is a medtech company conducting clinical studies for a novel connected medical device for treating chronic snoring and mild obstructive sleep apnea. She has a background in hardware and financial products, and is based in Canada. So thanks for getting up early. Hope you had a good sleep. Next is Collin Jerome, who is a passionate entrepreneur, former insomniac, and therefore very I think passion-led probably venture here. Graduated at École Centrale of Paris, an engineer, worked at GC and recently came back to France to launch Moona, which is a startup leveraging temperature and machine learning to build the next sleep solutions, which you can see, I think, right beside her. And last but not least, we have Emma, whom is a senior IP lawyer at the international law firm Bird & Bird, which is based in London. And Emma in particular leads the firm's global wellness group, which is supporting startups as well as more mature companies in all areas of the wellness industries since 2015. So we should have a good essentially 40-45 minutes ahead of discussions, and right after we'll start to open to questions. It will be kind of like first in first out type of thing. So if you have questions, just write them down, and then we'll open up 15 minutes before the end of this panel. All right, I think we're all set here. I wanted to start with something a bit a bit fun. Like everybody's an entrepreneur here. We all have. Sometimes it's missing, a passion with a calling, and with a market. You kind of have to meet things up at some point in time. And so I'm very curious about why did you choose sleep tech, and in particular. One way to kind of crystallize that, is if there is one statistic or one metric which your mind was blown about thinking about sleep tech. So I don't know. Let's start with Rachel, for example.
Yeah, no, happy to share my journey into sleep. Well, my journey is a little different than most. It started with the opportunity to join a research team that was looking into sleep-related breathing conditions. But at the time, I wasn't actually enjoying my career prospects in banking. So that's when I decided to join this research group and explore more into sleep. But at the time, I was inspired by my friends and family who were being sent home from their doctor's office without a solution and continuing to suffer, which kind of pulls into my fun fact, is that 25% of people will snore at some point in their lives. And with that in mind, there's no golden solution for actually treating chronic snoring or mild obstructive sleep apnea. And so more often than not, you get sent home from your doctor's office without a solution. And so that's when we dove into this research and really started trying to pull out a clinically proven solution that can actually help people sleep better.
That's fair. Colin, is it about insomnia or is it about something else?
For us, it was really one study that we read, and that ended with a sentence close to, "In the future, we'll see product that leverage temperature to improve sleep," and we were like, "That's gonna be us." So that was really that one study that make it, clicked.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this, but temperature is an obvious key factor in regulating the circadian rhythm, essentially for helping to maintain the sleep and waking cycles. So this is just, I think, the beginning of the journey here. Tim?
My journey kind of started with insomnia myself. So I was, pretty busy, stressful job, ended up getting insomnia. Went into a sleep clinic, and it was really incredibly helpful. It did wonders for my sleep. But the kind of stat that really did it for me is that nearly 2/3 of the population want better sleep, and 1/3 of the population could be classified as having a form of insomnia. Yet only 2% of the population ever get to go into a sleep clinic and get the kind of advice and guidance they need. So that was really kind of our mission behind Cocoon, was how can we take all of this great science and knowledge and make it accessible to anyone, however they want to use it.
I'll stay with you, Tim. You are probably, I think, you've been at it the longest. Let's put it this way. You came up with a couple of products, but certainly many more iterations over the years. And perhaps if you can just take a couple of minutes to kind of explain your what your product is about, and how does it improve sleep, and what it took to get there.
Yeah, so our product's really kind of two elements. So really, audio is actually one of the most effective ways of helping the mind kind of disconnect from whatever it's worrying about and focus on something else. And often it's that circle and cycle of worry that is so prevalent in insomnia. So really at Cocoon, what we're all about is creating this feedback loop between the individual's sleep and the data that we collect from the individual about their sleep, and the coaching and guidance and advice that we give through our product, and also how we make their listening experience respond to them. So really creating that link between the real world, the real issues, and what they're listening to is what we're all about. Because too often it's kind of one size fits all. Here is some generic sleep advice or some generic relaxation exercise, yet we're all individuals and we all have our own different challenges with sleep. So that's what we're really about at Cocoon, is closing that loop between the real world and what's actually going on, what they're actually struggling with, and the advice that we give, the tools that we give.
Colin, you've also just shipped a product.
It's been more than a year now.
More than a year now.
Yeah.
Excellent. How does it work?
Yeah. So at Moona, we so as I was mentioning, using the fact that our body temperature has a big impact on our sleep. So in fact, in order to fall asleep, we need our body temperature to decrease. We're losing approximately 1 degree Celsius when we fall asleep. So that's why so many people flip the pillow to the cool side when they can't sleep, or maybe put the foot out of the cover. We have kind of a gymnastic. And during the night, we also need to keep a low body temperature to have a good sleep quality. Whereas at the end of the night is the opposite. You need to warm up in order to wake up and be productive quickly. And so Moona is going to track and understand your sleeping pattern and then regulate the temperature of your head and neck. So through a pillow pad, I have it here. You slide inside your pillowcase on top of your pillow, and it's connected to the product that you see behind me. But that base that you put on your bedside table, and the whole thing is going to understand so your rhythm, and then act in temperature on your head and neck area, which is a major thermoregulation area for the body. And we have that part. And as Tim was mentioning, the personalization as well is super important. We're all very different when it comes to sleep, when it comes to temperature. So there is an important AI part in the product to really learn to adapt to each sleeper and have a temperature profile which is adapted to everyone. And we also have an app that goes with the product with sleep data and coaching to really make it a whole experience.
Thank you. Rachel, you have a product. So, Moona and Cocoon are two consumer products, and we'll come back to kind of what is the consumer versus the health journey right after. Rachel, you have a product that is undoubtedly in the medical space, and how does it work, and what kind of medical device is it?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Xenia is conducting clinical trials for creating a connected medical device for treating chronic snoring and mild obstructive sleep apnea. And so we use neurostimulation technology to externally increase tongue patency to alleviate airflow restrictions associated with chronic snoring and mild obstructive sleep apnea, trying to really address the underlying physiological cause of the conditions. And so our system actually consists of a wearable unit, consumable adhesive, and a mobile app that controls the therapy. And so it's worn every night before you go to bed. It's able to continuously deliver that therapy while you sleep. So that way you and your bed partner actually get a good night's sleep there. And so for us, pulling on what Tim and Colleen said, is really being able to deliver a personalized therapy that actually is able to help them. And we're also collecting information about their sleep and general health, so that way we can actually demonstrate to them and their prescribing physician that we're actually having an impact on their quality of sleep and reducing their snoring and OSA events. And so with that in mind, it's really important to be able to deliver that personalized sleep experience. So very important.
And I think Cocoon was to probably like 2 to 3 years to get to market. I think Coline was probably more of the same, couple of years perhaps. Rachel, you have different timelines here in mind, right, to take your product to market?
Yes, and for those that are exploring medtech, I don't have the best fun fact for you. The average medical device takes about 5 to 8 years to get to market, and that just is because you have to go through the clinical validation process, spend extra time investing in quality management systems and manufacturing processes, and then eventually submit to the health authorities, which even has its own long wait time from 3 to 12 months, depending on what process you're going through. And for Xenia, we're just wrapping up our first clinical trial. We still have one more to go, and then we're aiming to submit to the FDA for 2023. But at this point, we use our clinical work as well as other market information to demonstrate our traction and validate our work that we're doing. So it's worth the journey. And I know Cyril has lots of questions that he wants to ask about the differences between consumer and medtech, but they both have their pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely, for both entrepreneurs and investors, and I think we'll come to that right after. Do you collect data, Rachel, of any kind actually in the process?
For our product, we're collecting heart rate, blood oxygen levels, movement, as well as we have a microphone, and we're able to collect all of that data and put it in the mobile app as well as our physician-facing platform just to communicate the therapy's effect. But also we're developing machine learning algorithms as well to be able to actually adjust the therapy dynamically throughout the night. But one of those big differences between medtech and wellness or consumer products is you really have to take that minimum viable product to market. And so that's what we're doing right now with our continuous therapy while we spend time investing in the process to get a machine learning algorithm through the FDA, which is a much longer process. But at the end of the day, you always have to have multiple products in your pipeline as you're developing and taking things to market. So this is the approach that we've taken.
Yeah, and Tim, what kind of data do you collect?
So we collect quite a lot of different types actually. So we're from our devices, we're collecting heart rate variability and motion, but we also collect a lot of data through interaction with our app. So when someone new joins our platform, we'll ask them quite a lot of questions to dig down into their issues. Well, it depends on kind of what their issue is as to how many questions we ask. But yeah, we collect data both from the individual contextually and also from our devices.
And Colin?
We're also tracking motion, so through actimetry. We also have the sleep environment, temperature, humidity, and luminosity in the room. And through the app, same, we have a questionnaire to get information on the person. It's profiling, also some elements to the sensitivity to temperature and sleep issues. And over the time of use of the product, we have a feedback loop. We're asking the person to rate its sleep regularly and getting info through the app usage.
Yeah, I think what comes around from all of you is really about the future of sleep tech and devices in particular. It's really about personalization, and
yeah, definitely.
And there will be questions really about what can one device do, or what can many devices do together. I think we haven't been there yet, as most of you have been on the market, and most of the companies I think have been on the market for just 3-4 years perhaps. But I think everybody here can kind of see where things are going.
Yeah. Definitely on our roadmap, and I'm sure it's the same for at least Tim, we want to integrate with other like smart device and maybe medical device, and there's a lot of value to add to have more data on the habits and health data.
Just one side thing, we've talked just right before this event together, and we're talking about in particular the intellectual property, and you all have eyes on this in terms of protection. It's quite important once you get into such cutting edge areas where you can definitely create potentially more value for your investors, or for the future value of the company in general. I'm curious, Emma, you've been in that field for quite some time now. What have you seen in terms of dealing with intellectual property, as well as what do you think about the strategy of a startup that is 1 year old versus one that will be 4 or 5 years old, for example?
Yeah, really good questions, and hi everybody. I think what we've just spoken about there is so on point with personalization. I mean, my position is obviously supporting lots of different wellness businesses, but I think across the whole board, personalization is really driving the industry forward. I think for me in sleep tech in particular is age is a massive thing. I mean, one of my favorite facts that I learned when I first got into really loving this area of science is how your circadian rhythm changes as you age. And I think one thing we always see is businesses that do well are able to appeal to a very wide demographic, which other areas of wellness have typically looked at a kind of quite young, potentially affluent, urban-based demographic, and sleep appeals to everybody. So, there is a huge potential for businesses to grow. And one thing we see a lot of is that the age of your business isn't ever a limiting factor on how successful you can be. I think traditionally, it's always seen that the more years you've got under your belt, that's when success comes. But when you have innovative ideas, provided you're protecting them properly, being sensible, having a good strategic roadmap, people are becoming much more interested, and that's both on the investor side and partnerships as well, more invested in progressing the industry because they see real consumer value in it, but also the narrative around this is something that they want to be involved in. So, for a very early stage business, if you're kind of pre-launch or 12 months post-launch, the main factor you need to be thinking about is obviously managing budget. So you have to really prioritize where you need to spend. That might be on product development. If you're lucky, hopefully some of that includes legal budget, protecting things like your brand, but getting some preliminary advice on not doing the wrong thing and letting your invention potentially become public, because that could be really damaging to getting a patent later down the line. So getting clued up on the different areas of law, speaking to someone who can give you maybe some free advice or low cost advice, but point you in the right direction, so that when you do have budget, when you're able to invest in IP protection, you've not tripped over yourself earlier down the line, I think is a good way to go. Being mindful of it up front is probably the best advice I can give any entrepreneur. If you're obviously further down the line, you can start to think about international expansion, where your product's going. Are you properly thinking about how you handle the data? Have you got a good trade secrets policy in place? Are you thinking about product design, branding? There's a whole host of things that you can get involved in. But one step at a time would be my best advice.
Excellent. Yeah, as you can see, there are many things that entrepreneurs need to juggle, and everybody, I think, here has been through that strategy as well. I'm anticipating one of the questions actually out there, since I think in the audience you don't have that many people familiar with devices in particular. So there is we could spend the entire hour speaking about hardware ventures, and in particular on taking a product to market. But like how hard is it, Tim, to do it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been through the ringer. We've our first product. So yeah, that product was no easy product to get through. I think we had with that product, we were trying to do quite a lot of new things in one device, and that meant that it pushed our factory, it pushed our engineers, it pushed everyone outside their comfort zone. So it's obviously a learning journey when you go through this, but I'd say kind of one of the key things that I always recommend is just focusing on one real innovation, and just really doubling down on that and getting that right, because otherwise it can add to your woes. It's already hard enough getting a device out, but when you've got you know, lots of uncertainty around it from other angles, it can really yeah, make it more challenging. So yeah, you know, it's certainly, I think when I compare this product where we've kind of learned all the lessons to the last one, you know, this product has gone, you know, very smoothly, like a charm, touch wood. But even that has, you know, taken a fair amount of time. But yeah, I'd certainly say it's something to factor in, that things will take longer than you ever imagined to really get right. Yeah.
Tim, you can see the scars here. Colin, like how have you prioritized things up, in particular, you know, I guess between hardware and software?
For us, the really the added value of the product has always been on the action itself. Like a lot of sleep products are tracking and focused, used to, at least the first generation, we're focused on tracking. For us, it's not about the tracking, which is important, but that's not where we want to be 10 times better than any other products. It's really on the action. So we've prioritized the hardware to make it good, and now I think there is way more that we can do better on the software, both the AI, but also the coaching, the experience, like everything that we can do better. And to Tim's point, like it really also resonates with our journey, because like with our product, we are trying, and I think we're still saving, but like it's been a journey of trying to both create a new usage, like that's something that doesn't exist on the market. It's also a new science, although it's pretty obvious the link between temperature and sleep. Still, it's a completely new science, and sleep in general is a very new science. And it was also like technically to make it in a quiet, small product was also an R&D challenge. So I think we also had a lot to chew at the same time.
Yes, this is a great point. I keep on thinking or reading, or, you know, it comes back often about how, you know, easier it is to just build upon an existing product and make it, you know, 10% better essentially, and people already understand the value prop and understand the product, how it works and whatnot, versus, you know, trying to create new things.
It's
you know,
so
from
less
scratch.
fun.
But it's obviously less fun. So you know, it takes a lot of courage essentially to do all those things. Rachel, at you know, what moment made you regret to you know, start a hardware startup?
Well, I have to say, like, hardware is hard. MedTech, it's just also hard. And there's lots of medical devices out there that are that incremental change. They can file a 510K and get their approval within 6 months. Then, yeah, because we came from the lab, there's nothing quite like us on the market. So we also don't even have a comparable for that regulatory process. So we're essentially working with the FDA to outline what that actually looks like. So we really don't have a roadmap. I think the only nice thing about being medtech is, like, you know what you have to do because the FDA tells you, but then how you do it is really what we get to decide, which is a blessing and a curse for sure. So I have to say, like, we're going back to like the moment where it's like, oh man, this was really hard, was in Shenzhen, because in our first year of hacks, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to create a really good therapy, but also a product that is easy to use. Because our biggest issue, or well, my personal issue with medical devices that are used by a daily consumer is that they're hard. They're not easy to use, they're challenging. And we wanted to really focus on usability and comfort, so that way our product is something that people actually want to use and they find delightful. With that in mind, being at Hacks, I think we went through like 8 prototypes in the first year before we actually settled on a design and mechanism for delivering our therapy. And the iterating process of building any hardware product is really challenging and stressful because you're pushing your prototyping houses, you're trying to find components that make sense. And I guess it's the big benefit to hacks, and here's a plug for you, is that the office is on the top floor of a manufacturing market, or sorry, electronics market. So you can just go downstairs, pick up new components, go back upstairs. But there's a little bit of insanity of doing things over and over and over again until you find something that actually makes sense. And so for us, we now have a design that we're taking through a clinical study. We're working on our second generation to take through our second clinical trial. And I love the process. I love what we're doing. But sleep science is just so new that there are challenges in trying to actually bring it through the regulatory process, just because you're having to work with key opinion leaders to actually determine what your endpoints are for your study design, how you should actually be validating your core science. And there's benefits to being new, but there's also a lot of questions around it. So there's definitely something to keep in mind when you're going into sleep.
Did you always know that you would be a medical device, or was there a moment where you could have been, a wellness device, unregulated of sorts?
Yeah, we had a conversation at the very beginning about whether or not it would make sense to go into the wellness market. And for us, because of the way our technology works and the mechanism of action, we're sending neurostimulation therapy to the main dilator muscle in the tongue to alleviate airflow restrictions. And so we just met the definition of a medical device so clearly that we didn't really have the opportunity to go down that wellness route. But for us, we really wanted to solve the core problem, which is our friends and family are being sent home from the doctor's office without a solution. And they spend hundreds of dollars on snoring aids like breathe right strips or mouth guards that just don't work. And we wanted to provide a solution that they and their physician could stand behind.
Colin, how do you think about that dichotomy between the wellness and the medical space, or what and the therapy, of course, that is behind telehealth? Like how do you see the whole market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sleep is often a gray area where you are you have a chance or a risk of being classified as a medical device, depending on how you say it. And we've always kind of played in that gray area, and stayed on the wellness side, because for us, it was already three years of R&D to get there. I think medical device would have had at least 2 years. And to us, the first step was to be wellness, to get a lot of data, and to have our algorithms start learnings and have more data to show the impact of the product. So we started with 2 clinical studies with the hospital. We actually managed to start one clinical study after just 1 year in the project, which was super interesting. But then you do a first study with a prototype that has 1 year. When I think about the one we use for the medical device, it was really crap. Anyway, but so it's difficult in sleep to show results when you start, because you're trying to improve sleep, which is so fragile. And for us to demonstrate impact when we were really starting, you already almost need something perfect, because you need something that is super quiet and comfortable. Otherwise, if you don't have that, but still you have the temperatures that is coming, but it's super loud, you're not going to help anyone. So I think there's a real challenge, especially for sleep products, to show impact when you're in prototype. And in terms of the industry, I think is going towards more and more regulations, and more products are going to be classified and have to be medical device, which is, I think, which is good in a part, but it's going to be even more challenging to be able to reach that point where you can be a medical device and demonstrate all the impact that you have and raise the money that you need to get there.
Yeah, we'll talk about that right after. Tim, are you going to be the first headphones that reach the medical device status? Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, some really kind of, I was nodding away there to some of Colin's points, because yeah, I think, it's almost, thank goodness we didn't with our first one, because we know that this one is such a better fit and helps customers, to another level than our last one did. So really kind of making sure that the product's really delivering an impact and positive outcomes is almost where we really start with this. So we're working on a number of clinical trials as well, and at some point we may do a medical product, but really where the strength is in our product is the big data aspect, and having lots of people interacting with the system and continually refining and driving the learning flywheel that drives better and better outcomes. And within the timeframes of a kind of medical product, the iterations that you kind of need often can be prohibitive to making the progress. But I definitely see the balance. A lot of our team come out of the medical products world, and one of our principles was really, we don't want to start there. We want to start in the wellness side and then move into it kind of when tactically it works.
How often have you heard investors talk about that to you, and has it changed some of your trajectory?
I think less than you'd think. I can't remember the last time we had an investor kind of querying on that. I think for us it's quite, the distinction's quite apparent. We're a headphone device that you can use just as a regular set of headphones, as well as helping yourself sleep. And the audio, there's many apps out there kind of with audio that are helping. So yeah, I think we get it less and less. I think the market has matured a lot more and investors are more informed about it. I think we used to get it back in the early days a lot more, but generally people know what we're about now.
Yeah. So it's been very easy for you to raise money.
Oh no. No, whenever you tell an investor that you touch hardware, I think you lose about 90% of investors. So yeah, I would certainly say that that's always kind of on the mind. But as a company, we're really moving to a kind of a platform that will work with multiple products. And yeah, that's kind of where we see our long-term future as being a platform behind products that are able to sleep track.
Yep, makes sense. Colin, you are kind of perhaps in the eye of the beholder between that wellness versus medical. So what was the feedback from investors?
I think most investors understand why we started wellness and really think that was the right path, and I do too, because that's, I mean, if you want to touch more people, it's way faster like that, and the sleep market is so huge. So many people have sleep issues and complaining about their sleep that you don't have to be a medical device as long as you prove that you have impact. So yeah, for us it has more been about demonstrating our impact, which now we have really great data to show that, than having the stamp medical device. So I don't think, yeah,
and displaying some traction as well, I guess.
Yeah,
so that's why you both have done Kickstarters essentially, and demonstrate part of the design.
Yeah, that was a great traction to show, and that's how we raised the seed right after, a few months after.
Yeah.
Rachel, sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's definitely what we've seen as well across, because we obviously see it across lots and lots of companies rather than being in each company directly. And I think where you've got a product that you don't need to be a medical device to start, we've seen real trajectory for the business, and it's easier to get people to understand on a personal level a device that's not necessarily too complicated from a consumer perspective. You've got that wider appeal, it's easier to explain more quickly, and you get the non-technical people within who have to that might be wanting to invest in you or partner collaborate alongside your business. They can understand it for a lot of clients more easily, and that doesn't mean that you can't then go to version 2.0, 3.0, and your customer as well is always growing. If they're on the journey of investing in their sleep, they're going to learn more, they're going to want to think about what's the next level up, and that as your consumer gets more educated and as the market gets more educated, and this becomes an area that is less niche. It's already a massively highly valued area, but in terms of scope and spread across the market, there's still a long way to go. So I think it's not, if you have the opportunity, I know for Rachel it's not there to to avoid the medical device discussion, but it's not necessarily a blocker to position yourself in wellness if you've got the ability to grow into something more technical as well further down the line.
Yep. Thank you, Emma. Colin and Tim, just one question on that. Like, it's good to hear that that investors are caring about other things essentially. But what about customers? Like in terms of communication, how important is it to look medical, if you will?
I think one of the challenges for sleep is that sometimes everybody's saying the same thing, but there's actually very different things behind, like especially for the first generation. And I think now the market is educating and that's changing a bit, but you see different brands really claiming the same impacts, and I don't think there is the same studies and the real same impact behind it. But I think for consumers, like we show studies on our website. I don't think anyone really clicks on them, for instance. I think it's important for them to see there is an approach which is with doctors, and then it's still something that's very important, but I don't think the medical device stamp still is important for them. But I'm curious to hear, Tim, if you have a different view.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd agree exactly with that. I think, the more sophisticated consumer is looking for that data and is reading up on, the background. But generally, people have got pretty good instincts as well as to what helps. And often it's the soft testimonials from the people that, we've really made an impact on their life that are the most compelling for our customers.
Yep. Rachel, there is for those who haven't tried a venture in medical devices, everything that is being tried, I think, over the last 5 years is quite new, since medical devices weren't bootstrapped in the past. They were actually iteration on the existing, and they were actually heavily backed. Think tens of millions of dollars. And a few years back, some entrepreneurs started to get interested into this, but I would say that the actual investment community on medical devices is fairly tight at early stage. So just curious, to know a bit about your fundraising journey, and just some perspective, I think, about what you think it takes to actually get the money in the bank in order to build those devices.
Yeah, Senya's fundraising journey definitely has been interesting, because once again, we're not quite a traditional medical device. When I speak with a lot of the med tech seed and Series A investors, they're used to looking at like catheters or medical equipment to transfuse or evaluate blood, or they're not really expecting us, because from a glance we look like a consumer or a digital technology. And then when we start to explain how our therapy works, they're like, okay, now I understand you're a medical device. Okay, great. But there's always that initial hurdle to get over. But it has actually given us a bit of an advantage because we look consumer digital, but we act like medical. We can actually pull investors from both sides that are interested in sleep and sleep medicine. So we've been actually pretty lucky to be able to have a good mix of investors. And they also do provide some really great insight and value to us because they can give us great connections for clinical sites on the medical side, but then from the digital health side, they've been really valuable in advising us on how to actually build out that part of our business model, which isn't something that normal medical device investors would be as familiar with. So we've been pretty lucky on that front. Excellent.
We have about 15 minutes left, so don't hesitate to get more Q&As in there. I've I think answered a couple of them already. We'll keep going. There's plenty of things to chat about. I think that right after the investors, I'm actually quite curious about everything that is related to sales, as well as the maturation of the market, or even your own strategies, and where is the market actually? Like Tim, for you, you are shipping worldwide, I think. And you are doing a mix of online and offline sales, and how does that has changed over the years, and where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the kind of market at the fore in terms of awareness and fundamental issues, as well as kind of awareness of it, is definitely US. So the US has always been our dominant market for 55-60% of our sales. I don't see that's going away. I think the US is very plugged into the value of sleep and sleep health, and you can see that in the number of sleep clinics. I think there's something like 7,000 sleep clinics in the US compared to the UK, where there's probably about kind of 50 or so. So yeah, I definitely see the US market as being dominant. But we speak a lot with kind of investors in China and India, where they perhaps have worse underlying fundamental issues with the sleep, but they've not really kind of because our product is English language, generally they've kind of not come into our product as yet. So we do see really big opportunities, just because the scale of the problems over there are so large, that this is a global challenge that is getting worse for everyone. New technology is only making this worse. The pandemic is only making this worse. There's real awareness growing that you don't have to tolerate, you can fix these issues. And yeah, I think that's it generally.
Colin, yeah, kind of the same questions. Where is everybody at?
Yeah, and kind of the same answers. It's for us, it's 70% of our sales are from the US. Definitely the biggest markets, and UK being big as well. But those are also US is also the market we are investing in. We haven't yet looked too much into Asia because it's a market that we don't know that well, but there are super interesting potential growth there. And in terms of like channels, I think that online is going to grow. Coving is pushing that for sure. For us, we are only on our website, selling through our websites, and we do think online is going to be the main important channel, because the video is good, the content is good. Being able to give more scientific proof, the reviews of the other clients are super important for our consumers. And so, yeah, that's the channel we believe the most in.
Yeah. Are you on Amazon?
Not yet. We're preparing that soon.
Tim?
So sorry. Yeah. So we're on Amazon. Yeah.
That sounds painful.
It is, honestly. It's a weird environment, you know. We'll always be on it, but it's its own new beast with its own challenges. You know, it can do volume, but it can also has its upsides and downsides as well.
Yep. Rachel, obviously you will have very different channels. Will it be the same market?
Yeah, we are pursuing the US market first. Even though we're a Canadian company, Canada's just not quite big enough for us to pursue. And one of the main reasons why we are going after the US is because they're most educated in terms of sleep science, but also snoring to date has been viewed as somewhat of a social condition and not actually a medical condition. The US over the last 20 years has invested a lot of research dollars into actually understanding why people snore and what the causes are. And a lot of our key opinion leaders that we work with have correlated chronic snoring to obstructive sleep apnea. And as you age, if you're snoring in your 20s and 30s, you're very likely to develop obstructive sleep apnea later in life. And so we're aiming to be able to try and treat that earlier, so it doesn't necessarily have the chance to develop into OSA. But with that being said, Europe still views snoring as a social condition, unfortunately. But there are other areas in the world, like China, that are looking to treat it and are trying very crazy new consumer tech to try and alleviate their symptoms, which is always kind of fun to watch. But in terms of the US market, sleep clinics are the main channel for current chronic snoring or OSA devices to be sold through. But it's a $6 billion industry with thousands of sleep clinics around the US, and the largest sleep clinic chain only accounts for 5% of that annual revenue. So it's incredibly fragmented. So for us, selling online to be able to break through all of that noise and having to sell to individual sleep clinics is going to be really important for us when we actually do enter the market. So it's something we actually need to plan for now versus later, because we need to stay on top of the regulations for selling medical devices online and the other reimbursement challenges that are associated with selling through sleep clinics versus selling online, and how that actually interacts with your prescribing physician, which COVID is actually helping quite a bit with that. And so we're hoping that those changes made to policies due to COVID will actually stay in place for the future. But that is another conversation.
Yeah. We haven't, even touched on, how COVID has impacted, all of you, but it's quite obvious, like all startups and other startups, that it hasn't been a fun year, and everybody's looking forward to, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here. So, it's probably similar to anything that you will read about, startups in general with COVID. We have a question, actually. I guess, Tim, you're probably the best person to answer that, which is, do you think sleep tracking tech should be using EEG as the gold standard, or is heart rate and motion enough to give solid sleep feedback? Heart rate doesn't give deep sleep insights, so how effective is it really?
Yeah, I mean, we're a company that's, worked with EEG quite a lot, and we've somewhat moved away from it as a technology. I think the thing with EEG is it's remarkably flaky, and consumers don't like stuff being flaky. They like stuff that works every time. And EEG definitely brings some extra insight into the sleep, but what we've kind of seen is that's somewhat limited in terms of kind of its usefulness, and we can get quite a lot of what we need from the contextual data that we can gather from the individual themselves. So when we look at kind of the value stack of what's happening when, we find that the kind of the heart rate variability data gives you enough to really make some quite informed decisions. Obviously, we are working on EEG and continue to work on EEG, as it's definitely the most accurate way of analyzing sleep, and the better the data, the better you can kind of get to grips. But we you know, are not beholden to that as kind of everything.
Yep, thanks. One question just came up. Is CS still the main conference for sleep tech, or any other event worth knowing around the world? Anybody?
I'd say, yeah, I think it is at the moment. You know, there are small conferences, so we've been to a few local ones, and there's some kind of more sleep practitioner based conferences that are definitely worth kind of getting into, but they're not really consumer facing. They're more kind of selling to the clinics themselves. But I'd say CES if you're talking consumer, for sure.
Rachel or Colin, have you been to other events that are worth it?
For us in France, the medical doctor, I don't know how to translate that, but summit has been super interesting. So local, so not US exposure, that is more meaningful for us, but it's been super interesting. We've done it 2 years in a row, and it was also I mean, building that credibility and having more questions and seeing the interest of the doctors change from 1 year to the other, maybe because we're still around and we had more data and more studies and stuff, was super interesting. And so that was for France, super interesting, but I'm sure it is in every country.
Emma, have you seen any, or in the UK?
Yeah, I think with COVID actually, and everybody moving online, what's been really interesting is the possibility of attending virtually places you would not go, you know, under normal circumstances. So, and that, you know, what we were talking before about kind of the globalization of this market is really interesting to see, you know, if you can find them in a market that's on your roadmap, to see actually how sleep is discussed in a different, you know, society with different demands to consumers' expectations of what they want out of the products, and how to meet those challenges. So I think that's been quite good to break outside of the traditional field, look at different areas, you know, attending events that are hosted by investors that talk maybe on a subject to do with health tech or med tech or insurance, or, you know, working with partners in the industry. And actually this is a great time to gather a lot of intelligence without necessarily having to attend in person. I think the only other thing to always bear in mind is when attending conferences is, I think, you know, I used to run a startup before I trained as a lawyer, so I can totally relate to the need to shout about your product all the time. But you know, from a patentability perspective, especially, and also from a design perspective, when you're looking at moving into new territories, you do have to be careful about what you share. So sometimes these conferences are great to go gather intel, work out where you'll place yourself, get your priority filings in, and then you can show your product and start to make connections and talk about it. I think that's something that entrepreneurs can get a little bit too excited about, and there's a very small window to when those kind of disclosures don't count. It's only 6 months before you actually file a patent application. So they're great for intel gathering, and absolutely go ahead and attend them, but do always have it in mind that you have to protect the value of your business, which kind of underpins what you're doing.
All right. I know we have still a few questions to go, but unfortunately we have to, you know, come to an end. I think you don't hesitate to reach out on LinkedIn to any of the panelists here with questions. They'll be happy to, you know, connect with you and answer things and recommend. You know, it's generally a very strong community of people, so don't hesitate to leverage your fellow entrepreneurs. And I'll leave the floor to Angela. Thanks again to all the participants and to the audience for your time. It's been great.
Thank you,
so
Cyril.
much.
Thank you. And thanks so much to all of our panelists for a really wonderful discussion. That was brilliant. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I'm glad we finished on a discussion of conferences, because we'd love to see you all at the HealthSpan show in May. Our speakers will be there if you want to put your questions to them. That's another opportunity to connect with them. So make sure you join up. I'll put the link in the chat just now. So it's free to attend. We'd love to see you all there. And thanks once again. And thank you to our panel.